Hey everyone, Azure Cosmos DB Live TV. How are you? Episode 53. We're going to talk about our Linux emulator with MongoDB. And we're also going to show a relatively new feature in Azure Data Studio and its ability to be used for your data in Cosmos DB using our MongoDB API. And I've got Stephanie back with us this week. Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Hey, Mark, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on the show.
No worries. Yeah, we're going to try this again. So for frequent flyers on this show, we had Stephanie on a couple episodes ago and ran into a couple of hiccups. And as soon as we got off the air, quickly realized what was happening. So we're going to give this another shot and get you all the way through. And then we're going to cover and talk about our extension for Azure Data Studio. So great to have you back. Hope you're keeping cool. I hear it's quite hot up in the Seattle area today. I don't often get to say this, but you should come down here to cool off down in Southern California. It's a little 20 degrees cooler than it is up there right now. So, but that won't last, I'm sure. So anyway, enjoy it while you got it. So let's get started. So I guess you're going to jump right in, and we've got some new docs or updates to our docs here. So yeah, let's dive in and explore.
Yeah. Great. So, like I mentioned, everything is going to be here in the docs on how to get emulator for Mongo running on Linux on your local machine. So I've already, just for easiness of the demo, I've already copied a couple commands. So we'll be using commands that I've downloaded into my text editor for just this demo purposes, but everything will be in those docs.
Okay.
So, yeah. So first step, what we're going to be doing is going into the docs. And in the docs, we have a Docker command. And that Docker command will be able to pull the Linux emulator image. And a couple of things we need to change to that to the command is to make sure the ports reach 10 to 55. In the docs, I think today we have 10 to 54, which we're updating it. So make sure to add up to 10 to 55, which is where Mongo runs.
That's right. Yep.
Exactly. And then other thing is we added a new MongoDB tag, which does a differentiator for this version of the emulator that runs on Mongo.
And then Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it possible to change the port that the emulator uses for MongoDB?
For Mongo itself, I'm pretty sure we need to use 10 to 55, just because of that's the one that Mongo runs on. And yeah, that's to my knowledge. That's
I figured as much. I just had a question from a user. They were like, "Hey, my administrator blocks that port. What can I do?" I'm like, you can't really do anything. A lot with the service because it's basically hard coded to use that port. But okay.
Yeah, we were using other ports. For example, I tested it on 254 and other ports, and it wasn't working until we used
makes sense.
10 to 55. Yeah, and then you also have the partition count. So make sure for the demo we have 5, but just for maximum performance, make sure it's up to 10. Yeah, so what you're going to do is then take this command, copy it, and we're going to go into our terminal, and we're going to run the image. So what it's going to do now is if you don't have the emulator image locally when you do Docker run, it's going to say unable to find the image, and then it will actually pull it for you. So once you do that, it's going to pull it. It's going to take a few minutes just to pull everything, and then you'll see that it's started, and it'll have the partitions that we provisioned for it. Another thing we get questions for is this evaluation version. What does that mean? It's just a warning that we have to users that this is still in preview. And we will make it GA after we have parity with all of the APIs. So today we are keeping it as preview just because we only support SQL and Mongo on the Linux emulator.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so once that's started, next thing we have to do is step 2, which is basically installing and pulling the certs. So you're going to take this command, which basically gets your local IP address and saves it to this variable called IP ADDR. And then we're going to curl for the self-signed certificate that allows the emulator to run. So once you do that, you can run that command, like I mentioned, and set it, and then you can pull the emulator. I already have pulled, so I could do simply a cat, and then you can see this is the certificate that's already downloaded. So once we have that certificate, we're going to go into Keychain access on Mac. And what you're going to do is you're going to go into File and Import Items, and then select the emulator certificate that we just downloaded. And then that's going to show up here on all of your certificates as localhost. So you're going to select that. And when you select it, there's a section here called Trust. So this is the process of us manually self-signing that certificate to always trust. So once you do that, this is the part that was issues last time. Make sure you close out this section so that way it can save properly.
Okay. That was, yeah.
Because I had to close it, it wasn't actually host and we couldn't find it. So make sure you close that out, and it's probably going to ask you for your password permission. So do that, and then you'll be able to see the emulator. So the way you can actually see it is you simply can go to localhost and make sure you type in localhost 8081 explorer index HTML. So this actually is the UI for the emulator, which gives you URI and primary key, primary connection strings, all of that. And this is the specific one for MongoDB. So actually, if you go into the Explorer, you'll see that this UI is going to work for us. And what you're going to do is going to take this connection string, like I mentioned, and go into your text editor. So there's a couple of things that we need to update. So I simply just copy and paste that connection string. And step one is to replace your localhost, secondary localhost, this one, with your local IP address. So the way to get that IP address, since we already got we ran the command to save that our local IP address into this IP address variable, all you have to go into our terminal and do something like echo IP address variable. And then once you do that, I think it's something like this. Once you do that, then you'll get your IP address, copy that into that connection string, into the section here. And then there's a couple of different parameters that we need to modify. So towards the end, you'll have SSL equals true. And then we added these two new settings. This setting is retry writes equals false. So actually, I spoke to Gal on the Mongo side. Yep. Retry writes is a feature that is today in preview. So if you don't have it enabled on your subscription, then you'd have to set this in the connection string as false. And then we also have TLS allow invalid certificates, which would allow us to run with the self-signed certificate that we just did.
I see a lot of people trip up on that last one.
Yes. So once you do that, let's go into our Python application. So I have a Python application. I have my connection string pasted in. This is from the sample. So actually, if you want to run a sample like this, you can just go into Cosmos DB Python Mongo samples, and you'll be able to get this. Basically, just has a couple of different things like deleting documents, reading the documents, updating documents, and inserting them. So I have that here. You can also, the things I just added, those parameters that I just added into the connection string, you can also add it into the client, things like SSL equals true or TLS equals true, TLS invalid equals true. This is another way for you to do it as well. And then, yeah, once you run that, we can do something like Python 3 run.py. And you will see that we've inserted one document. Woohoo! So great. So what is another way you can sort of visualize this data or use Mongo Shell, which is another popular console tool? We have a new tool called Azure Data Studio, which I have documentation on how to get it downloaded, how to get it up and running, and how to download the extensions, which I'll go over now. One way to do it is if you go into the portal, into any Mongo account, you can actually connect with ADS, select this button to connect with ADS, and it would actually take you to a place to download the Azure Data Studio files, or if you already have it installed, you can just connect the account, so it would take you to this particular scope in Azure Data Studio already, which is super convenient.
Yeah, it is cool. And this is, and for people that don't know, Azure Data Studio is essentially an extension in VS Code. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you got VS Code, you've already got part of it. You can get the rest of it from the portal right here. So,
yeah. Well, actually, Azure Data Studio is a fork of VS Code. So when you use Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when you use VS Code, when you use Azure Data Studio, it might look familiar to what you would normally use in VS Code, which I'll show just now.
Yep.
But it has similar things like extensions and all of the different cool things we already use with VS Code. But you actually have to download this tool.
Okay.
Yeah. And so once you download it, you click it in the portal, the directions on how to do that. You can then go into extensions, and then we have our Cosmos DB extension. So make sure you install that. And this is specifically for MongoDB. And make sure you're actually on the latest version, which is 1.2, 0.1.2. And this is also in preview. So while you're using it, if you have any feedback, please feel free to send it over to us via Twitter or any other different methods. I'd love to hear it from you guys. But yeah, once you get that extension installed, then what you have to do is go back to this connections pane, and you'll actually do something, select this button, which will allow you to create a new connection. So you can do this every time. You can do this with anything in production. You could do this with Linux Emulator as an example. And then what you'll do is you will select Mongo account. Yep. So the cool thing about this extension is actually that you can run native Mongo, you can run Linux emulator, you can use Cosmos Mongo, and you can really use anything as long as you have that connection string. And then what you'll do is you'll get a connection string that we built just now, which has all the TLS and the IP address and all of the settings properly built. You go into your Azure Data Studio, insert your connection string, and then you can do like insert some naming and server groups, all of that. This is like you could just modify it so it looks really nice and convenient when you're accessing it. But I already have this connection created, so I'll just go to my Linux emulator connector here, and you'll see that this opens up this dashboard view. So in this dashboard view, you can see all of the databases in Linux emulator section that I have. And then you can double click on it, and it will open up a new tab with all of your collections, the storage, documents, all of those details. But because this is Linux emulator, it might not have all of the complete details for storage that we can pull from a Cosmos DB collection. Yeah, so what you can do from here is basically select one of your collections. And once you do that, let's just do this one because it's simpler. It actually opens up a terminal on the side that is using this DB in context. So usually in Mongo, you have to do something like use DB and then the name of the DB. But in this case, if you select DB, it's actually going to be in context to what we've already selected. So you don't have to do anything additional. So it already pulls this API MongoDB, which is the database that we have selected. And then you can run something like db.sample collection. This is really just embedded Mongo shell. So anything that you run on Mongo shell, you can run here. And we could just do a simple like find here, and then you would see the objects that we just inserted, which is really nice.
Wow. So this is really cool. So you've got a GUI like you have with other Mongo tools, like Compass or whatever. And then you've got Mongo shell within the same kind of whole experience there. So you can go back and forth. This is cool.
Yeah, exactly. And we can also open up, if you have a Cosmos Mongo account, you can see all of your details here. And you can create a new database, query with Mongo shell. We have links to documentation. But in this case, another cool thing that we have here is that you can import sample data. So if you guys are a long-term Cosmos user, you probably see in the portal we have inserting data, but it's only like 4 to 5 documents. And with this new tool, you can actually import like around 50,000 documents.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a really cool data set, actually. It's like sales orders, so you have customer data, you have like emails, passwords, so you can do a bunch of things with that data. And yeah, so I can actually show you what's in there. So if you double click on that collection, it actually, again, switches the context and opens up a Mongo shell. So you can go back and forth to different Mongo shells, and you can also go back into your Linux emulator. You have it up here. So you can go back and forth, which allows you more flexibility when using this application. But yeah, so you can do something like db.persons. So we can see the data set. that we have. And this is one example for, we have object IDs, customer types. We also have sales order types, and a bunch of other things. You have, first name, last name, email address, password details. So really cool data set that you can use for trying out Cosmos DB, and then running some queries and see how it works.
I love it. This is really cool. I got a question from one of our viewers here. Are there any plans to support running Linux emulator on macOS M1 architecture?
Yeah, that's actually one of our biggest asks for Linux emulator. So we are working on that feature, and it is on our roadmap. So we'll have more details in a few months on where that is.
Yeah, that'll take some time. I think it's not trivial doing that work. So, but definitely on our roadmap. We're listening to you, Mac users. So Steph here is a Mac user, obviously, as well. So, I think she'd like to be able to run on an M1 as well. So, okay, cool. What else? You got some more stuff to show us?
That's pretty much it, what we have with the extension. So if you guys try this out, and please let me know. I would love to get feedback on where we are, things that you'd like to see. Like I said, this is a new extension in preview, the first time we've ever attached to Azure Data Studio. And we'd love to hear from you on what you'd like to see next, and so that we can then include it into our future iterations.
This is really great. Of course, the tool is free, right?
Yeah.
So don't have to pay anything for it. In fact, you don't have to pay us anything because you could download this tool for free. The emulator is free. So you can come and check it out, kick the tires, and see what you think of our MongoDB API for Cosmos DB and our emulator and this new ADS extension. This is great. How many data sets do you have in the tool there? Is it just the one with the customers and the address?
Yeah, so we have one data set. We are planning on adding multiple types of data sets, so like a smaller data set if you want a larger data set. Right now, we just have the customer one, but in the future, we'll have options for you to click on multiple data sets, different types, IoT, and etc.
Okay, I'm putting up the link again for the Linux emulator for MongoDB. So feel free to go hit that page. You can follow all those steps that Stephanie went through there and go and acquire and get our Linux emulator up and running and then configured for MongoDB there. And then, of course, once you've got that, why not use our handy little GUI extension? I'm actually going to go down this thing. I think this is one of the cooler things I've seen in a while for us, just to have these kinds of tools available for, people like, not everybody wants to live in a shell all day. Some people do, but some people want to be able to look at their data and interact with it using a GUI tool like this. So this is fantastic that you've got this. And so how do they give feedback on this tool? Is there something within the tool itself?
Within the tool, there isn't, but actually, what I suggest is maybe going into the portal, and there is like this feedback section usually.
It's in Data Explorer, I think, in the shell there.
Oh, in the shell, right?
Well, not in shell. Sorry, in Portal.
You can also do it actually in
emulator as well in the Data Explorer there. Yeah.
Oh,
there you go. The smiley face.
Yeah, you can do it through here. It actually routes to like an email or something for you to.
That's it. Yeah. So that's going to go to the same team, basically. Did the same team work on both?
Yes, we do actually have access to it. It's like the portal team plus Mongo emulator things will actually.
Got it. Okay. Hey, this is fantastic. I'm glad everything worked this time. So that's always a win when everything's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Exactly. And this is great getting to see this. This is some fantastic stuff. Like I said, I am going to go download this thing right after we're done here and connect it up to one of my, or maybe a couple of my Mongo accounts and play with this. This is really just wonderful.
What I really like about using it is you have the multi-account support, so you can add in multiple subscriptions and you can view all of it in this like server connection view. So if you have multiple accounts, you can just have it all here. If you have native Mongo even running, you can see it all in one view, which is super cool. And you have like SQL databases. You can also use an extension and see all of your SQL server details all in one view, which is really good.
That's okay. So because there's obviously this ADS was built originally for SQL Azure, I guess, right? So so you add our extension in there, and then you can have both SQL Server. I see, yeah, and MongoDB. Is there any plans to do our core SQL API? Do you know?
Yes, that is also on the roadmap. So we initially shipped with Mongo, but we have engineers working eventually for SQL API. That's going to be the next iteration. We are still working on additional improvements and feature on the Mongo side. Once those are done, we're moving on to SQL API.
I think it's funny you did Mongo first. Is there a reason why? Did someone make someone mad over there or something?
Well, a lot of the things, one of the things we wanted to prioritize is being able to do something like migration on Mongo. So a lot of like native Mongo, we can eventually, because we support native Mongo, we'll be able to also do something like copy collection. So copy from native Mongo into Cosmos DB if that's something that you're looking for, that path forward. And so that we wanted to make that easier.
Yeah. We're gonna have Shweta on here pretty soon. We tried to get an episode with her, but yeah. For those of you, we've not talked about this before, but we've got a new feature called Copy Collection. Look at me making news on my show. I probably shouldn't do this, but here we go. That's coming pretty soon for you folks, and I don't want to spoil the fun, but when you see the episode for Copy Collection pop up on our homepage, definitely you want to come check that out. So live or on demand. So, well, all right. I don't see any more questions in the chat here, but let me run some announcements. Maybe sometimes they just pile in right at the end there. So, so thank you for joining us this week. Next week, we've got an old friend of the show, Lenny Lavelle. He's going to come on and talk about data modeling and partitioning patterns in Azure Cosmos DB. And, we ran a survey recently on Twitter, and you told us you wanted to see more data modeling and partitioning. So hopefully this will help with that, but we're taking your feedback loud and clear. We know that you love our modeling and partitioning content. I know it's a hard topic, especially if you're coming from a relational background. When you're trying to get into this NoSQL world, it's very different, right? So, and a lot of the things you learned as a developer using relational databases, you kind of just chuck that out the window when you're working to design and optimize for Cosmos DB. So join us next week for that on the 4th. Also, we just had a user group last month. We had another friend of ours, Hassan Sovereign, come on and talked about a new tool. This is another extension for VS Code, by the way, although not a fork of the thing, but it's an extension in there. And that does actually work with our SQL API. And you can do a lot of cool things in there. You can write queries, you can analyze them, you can get RU charges, do all kinds of stuff, also free. So go to our meetup page here, aka.ms Cosmos DB user group. Check out the meetup that we had yesterday. Watch the meetup and learn more about this tool, and then you can go download it and try that out too. So yes, we're at episode 50. What are we? 53. We got 52 episodes that we've got in the past. So come check us out. You can watch all of our episodes on demand, and they're all there ready for you. And I think that's it. I don't see any more questions from folks there. So Stephanie, thank you so much. It was great having you. Glad everything worked, and try to stay cool up there in very hot, sweaty Seattle.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.